Yeah. Yes. She goes. Yeah.
When you go in the entrance, it's part of the people, right? Turn left, you which one?
Well, it won't count as all disease. And
Got a letter.
and
You could, you know, working night. You got night. Look at bed, lights on, go get out, and talk to the dog, hey, you got this, you listen. And so, your door's open,
We're probably gonna need the mics for sure tonight, so.
Testing.
Careful.
He's on the right.
no.
It might be the first one overhead.
Call the meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the City of Williston City Council. Today is Tuesday, September 22nd, 2020, and it's 6 p.m. Ms. Wright, will you call roll?
Mayor Robinson,
Here.
Councilman Goodman, Vice President Head,
Here.
Councilman Jones. Here. Councilmember Robinson.
Here.
Councilmember Ross.
Here.
Interim City Manager Dennis Strong. City Attorney Fred Coberlin. City Clerk Latricia Wright. And others.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Coverland said he would be in momentarily. He is close. So with that, we'll ask the mayor to open with a prayer and pledge of allegiance.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. Thank you for many blessings that you have given us. Lord, we pray that you be with this council and make the decisions that would be best interest for this city. Lord, we pray that you would be with our police and fire as they go about their daily duties and protect them by all means necessary. Be with our military men and women wherever they may be and protect them and bring them home safely, Lord. For it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Item 1 is additions, deletions, changes, and approval of the agenda. Anybody on the council have anything?
No, sir.
Not, I entertain a motion.
Sorry, TJ.
There's one item I'd like to ask council if they would consider as it ties into another. It will be
Item D, under Chico Carroll, is presented by Jackie Gorman. It ties in with BNC, is the reason for the request.
I didn't hear that, I'm sorry.
It ties into item B and C in their
Gotcha.
old business.
Okay.
Chico Carroll.
Is it Chico Carroll or
Yes.
Carroll Chico? Here, Chico, I thought so. Yeah, Chico's fine.
Okay. Anything else?
That's all.
I'm sorry, is that discussion with possible action, or just?
It's gonna have to be discussion.
It's be discussion only, correct?
Right, it's part of the code enforcement, foreclosure discussion we're gonna have.
Gotcha, thank you.
If no other changes, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Second. Have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. Item 2, election of council president and vice president.
Oh. May I nominate?
Not yet.
Yes, they are. I'm excited.
First, let me say, please,
Okay. Uh-oh.
that as all of you are aware, Mr. Goodman announced his resignation as council president at the last meeting. Therefore, I would entertain a motion to ratify his resignation and to hear any nominations for new president.
I move that we ratify his resignation. I would also like to nominate Justin Head as president.
We have a motion and a second. So, open for discussion.
No discussion on that.
Steer me down.
Since this was your motion, do you have anything to add?
I do not, I believe that you would do an excellent job as you put your head down and beg in prayer. Would you be willing to accept that nomination?
I would be willing, but let me state that if we do that, then we have to elect a vice president. If we just elected a president, we only have to do one thing.
It's okay, it's easy to do. We can do it.
We can do it.
Okay, any other discussion?
Move nomination C.
Okay,
Second.
we'll take a vote on the motion at hand, which is to ratify the resignation of Mr. Goodman and nominate or elect myself as president of the council. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye.
Oh, come on.
Not really, right?
What goes?
I'm sorry.
No one.
He's kidding.
I'll vote for myself.
You can vote for yourself.
Okay. Motion carries. We have a new council president, which means we now need a council vice president.
I move that we elect, I nominate Ms. Councilman Robinson to be our vice president. She served admirably before.
Was that a motion?
It was.
Okay. So we have a motion to nominate Councilmember Robinson as vice president.
Want to second the motion?
I'll second.
Thank you.
You could.
I was fixing to do it. I'll put more pressure on you. Okay, I'll second it. You don't have to
Thank you.
nomination. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
That was easy.
Oh, that was really, Right.
Die over.
Item 3 is public participation. Let me just remind anyone that is in the public that would like to speak, please come to the podium and announce your name, and then you'll have 5 minutes. Aaron, you have the clock, correct? Okay. Would anyone like to speak in public participation? This will be your first of 2 chances. Okay, move on. Item 4, consent agenda. Consists of the minutes from the September 8th, 2020 regular meeting.
What happened to the minutes? They're in a strange format. It's like there's a draft. Those were,
Brooke took the minutes that night.
They took the minutes for me.
yeah,
They are a little different than what I normally do.
okay, and that's quite all right.
And I thank her very much for filling in for me while you all bring a chance to go on vacation.
Okay, the only thing I saw on page 4 was, I think it's Matt Crandall with an R, not Candle. Just the typo. Anybody else have anything?
I thought there were some items that weren't completed. Maybe not. Yeah, I know, they're just short and reasonable.
Do you need to be heard?
One motion, goes wrong.
Yeah, you just need to unmute and speak up when you get to that point.
I move the consent agenda is presented.
All right.
Is that what we need?
Yes.
Yes.
Second. There's a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Item 5, old business. Staff and board and council updates. Interim city manager Dennis Strode is not here. We have somebody,
TJ Thompson.
okay?
Evening, so not a whole lot to report on this. The community garden, we're in the process of finishing that up. The water meter has been installed. We have to dig one more ditch for them. The weather's kind of held us up on that, and then they will be online, fully operational. Another item that we will be working with in lieu of city manager Littman resigning, the city credit cards are to the point they need a signer on that. In dealing with Capital City Bank, it is tying it to individual credit ratings and credit reports. So we have begun discussions with Drummond Community Bank. They assured us that theirs does not tie in. Should for some reason the city not pay their bill, it actually reflects on our individual credit reports.
What?
So we are
Never
working
heard such a thing.
on that at this point.
Why? It's not like we own the business.
Right.
That makes no sense whatsoever.
It does not. Every time we have done this before, they assure us it does not tie to it. However, in the end, it appears that it does.
Huh. It's a good thing we pay our bills, huh?
Absolutely.
Let's move to Drummond.
Yeah.
And to add on to what CJ's asking is, we're asking for permission to fill out an application for a credit card for the city with Drummond Bank. I was assured by Mary Martha Hartley that it would not tie into our personal social security number. And in order for us to go forward to have the individuals on the credit card, we have to have it in the minutes and present it to them. So I just need a motion from the council, if possible, please, to allow us to move forward with this application for business credit card for the city.
How many cards would there be?
A total of,
Will be There will be 11 for staff, and then we were not sure who on the council actually had one. I believe the mayor does, and I'm not sure if the council president had one or not.
Why do we need 11? I'm just asking.
You have your individual, say you would have 2 for the fire, 2 for police, actually, kind of 3 for police. Ms. Willis will have one as well, then your individual department heads.
I'm just used to a large organization that has 2 credit cards and keeps them in a safe and you go get it when you want it.
They did that for a period of time here, and with the amount of time that they were spending in class and different things of that nature, you're having to track the card down, and when one had it, another didn't. So this has been instituted for at least 10 years at this point.
I mean, I can see one at police and one at fire and one at city hall, but
And this also
Right on the
stopped
clock.
when the individual department heads, it lowers the limit on the card that's necessary.
what is the limit on the cards?
It varies by department. Most of them are $1,000. I believe I had a limit of 5,000 or less. Logistics and the city manager had the highest limits.
This is not an increase in the number of cards, this is just moving them.
Just moving it
That is correct.
from bank to bank.
Mayor?
When will the old one be no good? When will the new ones be good?
After we are approved by Drummond City Bank, then we will cancel Capital City. But right now, we're still good with Capital City until 2001.
So you'll cancel them, say, tomorrow?
No, sir, no, sir.
Okay.
We first have to go through the procedures of the process of the credit card application.
Okay, just one.
Okay, so you're looking for a motion to approve the
Yes.
opening of the new credit cards with Drummond Community Bank?
Yes, sir, please.
So
And adding all the individuals that previously, that currently have a card.
Okay.
And at this point, as it's not an agenda item, we just ask for consensus of the council.
Okay.
okay. All right.
To remove.
I'll withdraw the motion if we
Right.
just need consensus.
Does everybody on the council agree?
Yes.
Anybody have any issues with it? Okay. All right. Anything else, TJ, from that?
Yes, sir, that takes
part?
care of it.
All right, CRA, Nick Williams, is he here?
No, sir. I failed to call them. I assumed they would show up like they did the last time, so I apologize for that, but I can give an update real quick if you don't mind. On the CRA, we do have an architect on board now, so we're working to get a meeting established so that we can do our final review of the parking lot and get that out to bid. So that's a big move for CRA board, and we're really excited about that. We've been in design of the final phase of Heritage Park to the north, and part of that's going to involve a time capsule. You're going to see it, some information that Laura's putting out about the time capsule and what we're trying to do, and we're trying to set a date to try and formalize that and get it moving. So we have a lot of little programs going on with CRA, time capsule, memorial bench, don't forget that's happening. Our planters, we still have planters out there that need some sponsors, so that's exciting. So that's kind of the short of the long of it with CRA right now, so we'll have more as we go.
Okay.
On planning and zoning, if I could just move right on.
Sure.
We didn't have a meeting last month, but next week we're gonna have one, and it's a special exception, which they're gonna be, having a hearing on, and then it'll be coming to council afterwards, and we have a minor subdivision that's being presented too, so a lot of activity out there, just to let you know. And I'd love to announce the 4th retail that's going on at Blue Rock, but I can't yet. But it's not a Rural King, so I'll let you guess.
What is the second of the third?
You know
All I
that.
have is Popeyes. I've got.
Yes, you got your Popeyes for sure. You have an O'Reilly's Auto Parts,
I heard
and we have an Aldi.
Aldi's.
And the 4th one is not Rural King, but I'll let y'all do it. On what it is. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for planning and zoning?
No, sir.
Okay. Next item, discussion with possible action, city-owned property located at 412 Southeast Fourth Drive. You right?
Okay, I don't know if you all remember, can you hear me? The mayor, I had spoken with the mayor about this. I was in charge at this time of getting someone to clear out this property. And here's the pictures. I don't know if you can see, but in those bushes behind that tree where it says posted, there is a single-wide mobile home. And this is city-owned property,
Shame on
again.
Uh-huh.
I kept trying to get someone to give me a quote. Several people promised they would give me a quote. I did receive one from a gentleman named Sean with KLBZ backhoe. And he estimated a total amount of $4,300 to clear that property off. That also includes the trailer, the little shed, and the debris. So his quote was $4,300. And if you look on your desk by your computer, I did receive this one today from James Bond, and his amount is $5,000 to clear the property off as well. My question is, how do you want to proceed with this, and where is the money going to come from in order for us to clear that property?
Okay, so this is a city-owned property that we foreclosed on and took back. And it's out of compliance, and that's the reason we foreclosed on it. So now,
Yes, sir.
now we're out of compliance.
Yes, sir.
Okay? Well, I guess you asked a couple of questions. I mean, I'll go ahead and voice my opinion first. I think we need to clean it, and we have to. I don't know KLB backhoe service, but I know Mr. Bond, but he's a higher bid, so if we're gonna go with the, you know, the lower bid, as long as he's licensed and insured, and, I don't know if we got any references or anything, but I would be okay with that. So what does the rest of the council think?
I do see here on Mr. Bond's, estimate, it's got final grade property. On the KLBZ, it doesn't have any grading on that. I wonder if that includes the grading, the final grade of the property. Just has clearing and demo.
Try, do you know?
Just a note from TJ, unfortunately, Mr. Bond cannot bid on this property because he's still a reserve officer with the police department.
Oh, hello. So, I think we go with the KL, I didn't think reserve officer got paid. Well, I don't understand why he couldn't bid on it. If you don't get paid.
I'm sorry, what was that?
So just a heads up, he is still listed on that as an employee of the city, even as a reserve.
Okay.
So you may want to ask Mr. Copeland for an opinion on that.
Mr. Copeland, do you have an opinion?
Not at this time. It just came tonight.
Okay.
But I would imagine that the issue relies or falls in the procurement manual of city or the HR personnel manual, but it just brought to my attention as it was yours.
Okay.
And the other bid is the lower bid, so.
Yeah.
Correct. It's like a mute subject. As long as it, I guess we could qualify it with the fact that it needs to be graded flat, flat surface when he gets through with it. Yeah, because on his, bid, it has clear property of construction debris. It doesn't say anything about grading. It doesn't say anything about cutting trees down either.
It's got construction debris, but, and the mobile homes, but it doesn't address the vegetation. So it seems to me we need some clarification.
Mr. Carlson, can you clarify that? You were there with him?
Both parties had, walked the property with me. They're gonna completely clean them up, remove the fencing, remove the, old shed and, the mobile home. They're gonna make it so it's now a blank slate, and it's unfortunate, but it is a non-buildable lot.
Really?
So it's, probably gonna be used as a green space for the, community, put a swing set there or something like that. So, but it will be, with both parties, it will still be brought down to where it's a nice clean lot.
It's too small to be a buildable lot, is that the issue?
I talked to, Ms. Gorman today, it's non-buildable,
Yeah.
it's 50 by 100.
Right. 50 by 100 lot.
They're, very narrow, and, it's just, that's the luck of the draw that we had somebody that just, walked away from their own property.
Okay. If we decide today to go forward with this, are you gonna oversee this?
That's correct, I will.
Okay. Mr. Ross, you have anything? Mayor? Okay. So the second part of this is how do we pay for it? Mr. Bloom?
Bloom.
Mr.
There he is.
Nice to be here, Mr. Bloom.
Good to be here. I'm assuming that this will not get completed before the end of this month, which puts it into your fiscal year 2021 budget. And you do have a contingency of about $13,000 in the general fund that you can use, you know.
Hate to use it for that.
I agree. I don't know if we have a lot of options in getting it cleaned up. I mean,
I don't think we can get it done in a week.
No.
You know when you can start?
Deposits required by the 28th.
We would have to, get with, either party and let them know where the begin date would be. And if they say they can move forward on that, I don't know either party's schedule, but they both, come forward to clean the lot.
okay.
We could pay the deposit out of this year,
Right.
out of this year's budget.
Well, we have to, it's required by the 28th on this one.
Right.
It doesn't matter as a deposit, it would go as a prepaid, so,
Oh, would it really? Oh, gosh. Oh, well.
So is that our only option?
yes, that should, yes.
Okay.
Which one? Yes.
There we go.
Good question.
All right, so we have the bids and we have only one option to pay for it, so it is the pleasure of the council.
Yep. I think we move forward with the KLBZ backhoe service. Second motion.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to move forward with the contract for KLBZ backhoe service to clean the property. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. At least we'll get it cleaned up. All right, next item, city planner Jackie Gorman, code enforcement procedures, list of all foreclosure properties.
Yes, sir, I was, with my understanding at the last meeting, y'all asked me to try and get the expenses together that we've paid out so far for each of the cases that you agreed to move forward on the foreclosure. The first one was the Richardson property. The lien amount now is $91,500. The expenses to the city, this did not go anywhere. I could not find any record of legal fees at all, but the fees that I did find amounted to $568. The next one was Zamora, and it did have actual invoices for legal fees that amounted to $1,753. So that lien amount's the same because they were both filed at the same time. But that had legal fees, but I couldn't find legal fees for the other one. The third one is Days, This has been sold to to Emilio on 7/20/2020, and he is here tonight. The lien amount is $50,400. The expenses I found on this one was $545.92. No record of legal fees at all. And then, of course, the final one was Felici, which was sold to Chico Carroll in 2018, and that's the one that we have the mobile home on with a permit. That lien amounts at $44,400, and the expenses by the city is $325.51. And of course, I couldn't find any regular legal fees. So at this time, 3 of them just had your regular mail, and these fees I'm talking about were like mail outs, recording fees. I included the title search that was done recently on it. I tried to find everything I could to answer this question, but there was only one that I actually found invoices for legals on, and that was Zamora. And we have not been, no one's been in contact with us on that property. That's the only one out of the 4. The other 3, we have people that are going to be requesting tonight that they be mitigated. So that's what I found for you. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to try and look up more, but that's as far as I could get.
Well, part of the reason I wanted this on the agenda was to talk about the procedures that we're using because of the issue that's next on the agenda. I mean, once we get to a certain point and we feel like we've gotten to that point where we're starting the foreclosure process, then we got these workout requests. And I just feel like we need some consistency within those guidelines as far as how we're going to handle them. And, what point do we not grant any kind of concession anymore? So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. We had, obviously, a long list of these, and I just feel like we need to be consistent and fair with how we handle them. And also, we need to make sure that we're not racking up just extraordinary fees that far exceed the value of the property, which is the case on some of these. And I think we need to, code enforcement, somebody needs to work on, and I know nobody wants to write policy on this, but I feel like we need to talk about what is the cap. We can't just be unlimited as to what these fines are as they build, in my opinion. There should be a cap, and there should be a process that starts at a certain amount or a certain percentage.
Yes, sir, I've already started that. I found different cities that had different ways of handling it. A lot of them had amnesty programs, where you open up a certain period and say, look, if your property is getting lien, there's a certain frame, a time frame that you can go forward and give them relief, provided you get in there and bring them into compliance. There's different options. So I have information on that. I'm putting it together for you, again, for futures. But what you have before you now is 4. 3 people have showed up of the 4, but we have 1 that hasn't. So I agree with you. I've been trying to find some way to make this consistent, and it's hard because years. Some of them have been going on since 2014, some just been going on a few years, so you've already settled on a couple of the properties, and so this is where we're at, just trying to figure out how to handle these remaining.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions?
I agree with what you say, is that we need to do, we probably need to have a workshop, maybe even with Board of Adjustment. To see if we can write it together.
Well, I'm gonna bring it to you, and then I'm gonna get you started. I'm writing it.
You're writing it.
I'm writing it. Board of Adjustment doesn't wanna be involved.
I know they don't. They said they didn't.
They
Right.
said
But
that
we
they
can't
would
throw it
rather
out.
see compliance than to go forward the way we've been doing it, so I
Right.
understand.
Sure.
We'll still present it and let them know what we're trying to do as far as the program.
Okay.
But when I talked to you before, I thought it was great. Let me bring you some options, and that's what I've been working on for you, so, for
All right.
future. That's okay.
So you just want us to go down these 4 right here?
Right
Or
now,
these
yes,
3?
and, Mr. Crandall has called in, I think, he's the first one on the Richardson property. He wasn't able to make it tonight.
Right. All right.
Okay, well, we'll move past this item to item B under old business then. So item B under old business is discussion with possible action, Matt Crandall, Old Winn-Dixie property, 1050 Northeast 6th Boulevard. Mr. Crandall home?
Yes, he's here. Hang on a second, Matt. Okay, go ahead, you're on.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So I want to refresh everyone's memory. I came to the meeting 2 weeks ago and stood up during the open period for the public, and just want to go over a couple of things and why I'm in this position at this point. So I completed the tiny house resort there at First and Second, just around the end of June. And sometime early July, I was reached out to by the owners of the old Winn-Dixie property. And they had heard of the project that I'd done and were interested in communicating with me about the potential purchase of their property. It wasn't really on my radar, to be honest with you. I had already been looking at some other locations in other cities around the Nature Coast. I am interested in continuing to build, and I do like Williston. It's been very easy to work with your city, and I appreciate that greatly. I put it aside, to be honest with you, until about mid-August, at which point one of my people reached out to me and said, hey, they're knocking on the door again. They'd be interested in talking to us again. So we started having conversations internally about what that might mean for the company. Again, we're not looking originally at that type of project. However, I had conversations early on with the folks there at the city about the fact that I felt that Williston could be, if you would, a tiny house hub, center of the tiny house universe for the Southeast. And, I still believe that's extremely possible. I think it's got a great possibility. I think it's a good location geographically. And there's a lot of visibility. And I want to point out the fact that, I don't know if everybody knows, but Good Morning Orlando did 2 live segments from our location this morning. So if anybody wants to see the live segments they did, I have a link to that. I've sent it to Laura Jones there at the city, and she can pass that out, I'm sure, to you if you're interested in seeing them. But very nice live segments on 2 different hours during the program. It's a very interesting concept, and what I'm looking at potentially doing there at the property, the old Winn-Dixie property, would be a multi-use facility that was retail, restaurant, lodging, and an entertainment venue. And the idea would be that we would attract people not only from Gainesville, Ocala, and the surrounding area, but also from the entire Southeast, if not the entire country. Themes significantly on the tiny house and tiny retail concept. There's a lot of that being done in European cities like Copenhagen. There are some in Germany as well, where they've created event spaces, lodging spaces that are themed on tiny environments that are extremely popular, extremely popular. People come from all over the world, actually, to see them. I've actually been to the one in Copenhagen. It's pretty impressive. What I'm asking the city to look at is, I'm in the midst of the due diligence period. I have to make a decision fairly soon, and I'm reaching out to the city to say, I'm going to take this property and put it under an approximate 5-year program. Year 1 is going to be cleanup, and I'm going to beautify it. If you've gone by and seen our tiny house environment now, we take great pains to make things look nice. And I would do the same with this property. We would get started, if we can get this done, January 1, and by the end of the year, that facility, if you drove by it, would be appealing. And right now it's not. It looks, honestly, I've had people tell me that, it looks like Zombieville. It is really overgrown and quite unpleasant from the side of the road. That would be the intention in year one, was to get it to a point where it can be productive. I'm saying it would take a year, but honestly, I think it wouldn't take quite that amount of time, but I'd like to give myself enough time to make sure the planning was done appropriately. At this point, as you stated, there's over $91,000 of lien against the property. I'm asking that the city vacate the liens if I purchase the property, with the understanding that I will make that property appealing, and that I will make it useful, and that I will put employees to work on that property and bring revenue to the city. Just so you understand, I have 5 employees that work at the small property that I have there at 1st Street and 2nd Avenue. This would be significantly larger and provide significantly more jobs. I'm also asking that the city take into consideration, from a tax basis standpoint, that I'm going to beautify it, but I need time to make it into a revenue-generating facility. And I'd like to know that the city wasn't immediately going to increase my property value and my tax as soon as I've beautified it, but prior to my being able to create a real wealth generation out of it. I want to make sure that I'm generating revenue. And if this means that we go under some sort of development agreement, I'd be okay with that. I just want to make sure that I'm not putting myself in a situation where I'm taking great risk, improving the property significantly with the intention of bringing revenue into the city, and then immediately prior to being able to actually create those revenue generation engines, be under a significant tax because the property looks so nice. I will make it look beautiful. So at this point, I guess I'm asking if the board can give me that consideration such that I can commit 100% to this. I'm looking to confirm a closing date by the end of this week. I really want to confirm the closing date. I've already had a significant number of people working on the property for me. They've given me access to the property, and I've had engineers over there. I've already reached out for a significant number of efforts that will get me up and running quickly so that I can get this place cleaned up. But at this point, I want to improve it to the point where it has no violations pretty darn quickly, as quickly as I can get that to happen. So I'm asking for that consideration, and if I could have the board give me that consideration, then I will immediately move forward.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Foreman, do you have anything to add to that before we discuss?
According to the lien search that we had done on this, the gross taxes are $9,600. So it's not huge, but I knew that question was going to come up, so I looked at that. I just wanted you to know what it is, so you can have a starting point.
And we don't appraise the property or reassess it. Right. The county does that, and Mr. Crandall, I'm sure he's aware of that.
It's not unusual to work with a property owner, just so you know this, because it is in the CRA district, which is huge for our CRA to get this developed. And that's not unusual, it's just something that has not ever come to Williston, to my knowledge, that you've done before. So I'd have to find out, get more information on it. But it has been done in the CRA district by agreement, just so you know that. If that be your will, we can figure that out.
Okay. The current tax assessed value on that property is $218,000. That's what I looked up today.
Property value,
The assessed value.
Yeah.
So we have a lien amount of $91,500, and our expenses incurred so far are $568. And we are ready to begin foreclosure, or we have already. I know we did a title search, and
Board of Adjustment gave them 30 days.
okay.
Mr. President?
Yes.
our records reflect that the registered property has $130, very nominal amount in legal fees accrued since August 5th. There was a small amount of work done in each of the cases until it was discovered from title searches that we should hold off until the August 24th Code Enforcement Board meeting. And then I can address the other cases later on. Are they a little bit off than what were announced? Nothing over.
So 698 would be the total. Right.
Okay. Council discussion?
If Mr. Crandall could get it back into useful property, not looking the way it looks, back on the tax, it's all in the tax rolls, but useful property tax rolls, I'm all for doing that. I would like for him to do it, as he says, within a certain period of time. And if a year is it, that's, to come into compliance, that sounds good. I am so mixed. I would not want to waive the $698.
No, we're not in the giving away of everything.
I'll make a few comments.
Yeah.
Please.
So, the way that I look at this, first of all, we've had a couple of these recently, where they were either somebody passed away or whatever happened, and we were approached, and my view on this has typically been the goal of any of this is really to get the property in compliance. It is certainly not for the city to own the property.
Right.
We just discussed one of those a minute ago. We're fixing to spend $4,300 cleaning up that we'll never be able to dispose of.
Non-usable piece of property.
Foreclosure piece is, to me, a necessary tool to get action, but it's not the ultimate goal, in my opinion. So, with that being said, the two that we have dealt with, I think, maybe Ms. Wright can correct me, but I think on one of them, I know we did $4,500. The other one, I think it was around $4,000. But of course, those were different properties and different value properties. This goes back, and I don't want to get back on that topic, this goes back to why we need a process in place.
Exactly.
For example, first of all, we should never get to, in this case, it's okay. $91,000 is a lot of money as a lien, but you got a property that's at least tax assessed value at twice that amount. So not the same as some of the others we're going to look at, but I am not going to vote to be the one to continue to let that property look the way it looks. So, is my opinion. I want to see it purchased, I want to see it cleaned up and brought into compliance. We've had a lot of discussion on this in the past. $91,500 is a lot of money. But I personally don't look at that as really money that we're ever going to get.
Right.
Obviously, the current property owner is probably the most likely one to pay it, and they haven't paid it for however long it's taken to build the $91,000. So I felt like they were doing it to let it grow until they could sell it, and they're selling it, and they're not going to deal with it. Whoever's buying it is probably getting a decent deal, but they're going to have to deal with it. How we arrive at what that amount is, I personally don't think it should be zero. Obviously, we want to at least cover our fees, in my opinion. But given what we've done on some of these other properties, and that we're going to have to discuss this on a couple more coming up, I don't know what the number is. I thought first maybe 10% when I looked at the numbers. 10% of the lien amount as something that we're going to basically concede the rest of it.
It works for me.
But on this property it's $9,100. But if you get to a property that's got a $50,000 lien, that's $5,000. But the lot's only worth $5,000. So I don't know if a blanket number really works all that straightforward. So, I've gone round and round, and I really kind of came back to maybe a 5% number.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, 5 sounds across the board on these.
I think our policies and our guidelines still need to have some teeth in it that we don't get to this point. if
Right.
at all possible.
Yeah, we need to do that as soon as possible.
And I know we're only talking about this particular property right this minute, but that's my thought process. We need to get something, but I don't wanna stop this progress, and I'd love to see this property cleaned
I'm
up.
tired of people asking what we're gonna do with that old piece of property, but I'm with you on the 5% plus expenses.
Plus expenses, we've got $698 left. That's fine, you're not gonna include that in the 5%, you're gonna
No.
add that.
No, and
Hang on a second. Matt wants to say something.
You can ask the property owner to deduct it from the sale price.
that's right.
That's
That's
what I
where
would
it
do.
should come from.
Absolutely.
Okay, Matt, you're on.
I'm amenable to the 5% plus the 698. I think I can work with the property owner, and I think I want to make sure that the city understands I want to work with the city to improve the city. And I think that's a fair situation.
Perfect.
And so it seems like in one instance, we had a developers agreement. No, that was something else, wasn't it? Okay, so,
You need to, while the gentleman is here, you need to discuss how you're going to accept payment. On at least one prior occasion, we did a conditional release where certain thresholds needed to be met, and then the lien that is in public records that has received some attention here. You don't necessarily want to get rid of that lien right away. You want to make sure that you receive payment and or compliance. So far, all you've discussed is payment. And then and you have not discussed compliance of accepting the offer that was stated, how long it would take to get the property into compliance. So as of right now, what I've heard is that you'd pay the 5% plus some administrative costs and the lien would go away. Now the question is, do you want any other assurance that compliance will be met within a certain amount of time?
Compliance within 1 year is what I was talking about.
Right.
And now,
Yeah.
now the question is, how are you going to work this out with the gentleman as to the lien? For example, you can go ahead and file a conditional release, which tells anyone who does a title search that it will be released after a certain amount of time or compliance prior to that, along with payment of costs and fees. But you need to have that discussion now so that we know how to craft it.
well, what other option do we have? If
You can reach an agreement outside the public records, but it doesn't have any collateral or security to it. The lien here is what is gaining attention. It is attached to that actual dirt over there, or that property. And the lien probably needs to be released. I'll let the gentleman speak for himself as to what he needs in the public records. But if you don't have a lien, then all you have is a side agreement, which is a contract. And if you want to enforce it because that contract is not followed through with, then you have a breach of contract. You can have some assurance there with a promissory note or something along those lines. But again, that's money that hasn't really gotten you very far with properties, as you've stated already. If your ultimate goal is compliance, then the lien needs to stay attached to the property until compliance is verified.
But in the event, and I don't know his specifics, but in the event that he or someone else on one of these deals is going to be purchasing and financing a piece of property, they're gonna run into an issue with title insurance and getting funding if we haven't satisfied our lien.
Yes, you're correct.
Thank you.
I think you need to discuss that with Mr. Crandall in the sense of what does he need in order to get the property closed on. You could always lower your lien.
The other question for that, before I ask him that, is if we do that now, and this sale does not go through, then we've reduced our lien on that property for the current owner.
You have, and any transfers, I think not too long ago, you realized that someone had transferred their property, even though it's subject to a lien. It's not much you can stop anyone from doing that. They can always deed it away outside the public's view. I think that you could have an agreement in place, and I'd have to look into this a little further, and the agreement would automatically allow a lien to be reattached to the property, but I'd have to look into that a little bit further. That doesn't, there are some things that come to mind immediately in the sense that you don't have as much protection. For example, someone that took the property prior to you recording an additional lien in the future for lack of compliance, that person would not take it subject to the lien. So there, you lose a lot of safety and assurance by agreeing to a lien in the future. Right now, anyone that takes that property, like Mr. Crandall, is subject to approximately $91,500 in liens. If that lien is reduced, and you get a promise that if you don't comply within a year, after a year and 1 day, a lien attaches. Well, anyone that's taken that property since then, that lien doesn't attach to them.
Well, this is Matt again. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
On my end of this, having worked with the city, honestly, I would feel comfortable with a commitment in the public record that said that the council has agreed and voted unanimously to agree that when I take ownership of the property, on the day that I take ownership of the property, at the nearest possible time after that, that they will then make that happen. I'm looking for a commitment from the city that says, we understand what you're trying to do, and we value and appreciate it, and that would give me the assurance that I need to close a deal. And I know that from a title insurance standpoint, we can work that so that it happens simultaneously, could we not? Such that my attorney could draft an agreement, a development agreement with the city, or the city could draft it and we could work together, however you want to initiate that, to come to terms that says, okay, as soon as the moment this happens, and the title insurance can, it's simply a critical path, and if we can have that critical path happen, your commitment in the public record is strong enough to me, to be honest with you.
May I ask Mr. Crandall a question? Yeah. Mr. Crandall, I'm not asking you a question in hopes of you divulging your path to a closing, but are you acknowledging that your only issue as far as the title and the public records is your title insurance?
I'm obviously gonna do, go through and have a title search done. There are a number of issues with the property. On an economic basis, I've gone through numerous that I'm taking into account. This one is one that I'm working in partnership with the city, and I feel that this commitment is, if it doesn't have clear title, I'm not gonna be able to purchase it. That's a yes or no thing for me. If it doesn't have clear title, then we're starting from square one again, and I have to figure out if we can get it to clear title If it can't, then we got other issues. But if I can get this one off the list, then I'm gonna proceed forward.
Mr. Crowder, it sounds to me like, I mean, basically, what we need tonight is to agree to an amount that we would release this lien for, and it be handled as part of the closing with the closing agent. We'll have to prepare a satisfaction of the lien, at the closing with us getting paid out of the closing fund. Is that not, that's a typical real estate transaction, if there's gotta be a lien or any other issue resolved?
And I think we've done a title search and we're the only lane.
Right, we have.
Yeah, we're the only lane.
Mr. Crandall, this is Fred Colbert on here. You're stating that you need clear title, meaning, are you saying that you cannot, through your financing, they will not accept a second priority to a reduced lien?
No, I'm saying clear title because if somebody else were to appear, I'd have to, that's a new hurdle, so that, you know, that might move things further, or it might be a stopping point for me. There is no mortgage.
Mr. Crandall, I'm a little confused because you stated that you're okay with an agreement in the public records, which an agreement could be titled a conditional release of lien, which would allow the city to continue to have a lien attached. So, but on the other hand, I hear you say that you need clean title, which would obliterate a conditional release of lien. So I'll ask it a different way.
Let's say
would you be able,
and except for what I know to expect from the city, because it's in the public record that the city has agreed to reduce the lien. That's what I'm talking about.
When you say,
Mr. Crandall, sorry, Mr. President.
Go ahead.
About at a conclusion here. Mr. Crandall, would you be able to close on that property if the lien amount was 5% of today's value plus the administrative cost the council has announced?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Then, council, what I've heard is that a conditional lien or a conditional release of a lien, as we've done in the past, would be acceptable to Mr. Crandall if you lowered the lien amount from 91.5 to 5% plus whatever the administrative costs are.
Down to 273.
Okay. That would then replace that number you see on your Jumbotron? On the TV there?
Big monitor, the sharp monitor.
That would replace the 91.5. You would still have a lien of something that might not get someone's attention in the future. There's always a risk with these things. There's obviously a risk with owning that property outright. So that would put you in the same position, lowering that 91.5, and then you would need to negotiate the time frame within which the compliance needs to be met.
Mayor?
If it were to happen like you just explained, and should the negotiations between the owner and Mr. Crandall fall through, if there was an encumbrance or somebody else come forward and his deal fell through, and you did what you just explained, then that would put the lien at $5,573 instead of $91,500. Is that correct? Against the owner. I think that what I did not say is I'm taking Mr. Crandall as to what he said about the closing agent would prepare these documents, and so that reduction in lien would only take place at immediately after they changed ownership. Okay, so okay. Just wanted to get that clear.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's a concern I've had too, because the current owner has not come forward and asked for anything like this. This is the potential buyer, so. Okay, so then we need to, so the time frame we've discussed is 12 months of, in compliance within 12 months.
Correct.
Can we, is there a way to put in there progress during, you know, the interim. I mean, I'm not 30 days, but, you know, we don't see anything happening in 6 months.
Would that 12 months be from the date of the closing?
Yeah.
Because who knows how long it's gonna take.
Yeah, it's gonna take a
Mr.
while.
Crandall, when would you expect to close on the property?
Well, the confirmation date I'm looking to, the week of October 19th is what I'm shooting for. That's gonna be contingent on the legal work that has to be done, but I think we can meet that date.
And then, did you comment
And
earlier,
I'm
Mr. Crandall, did you comment earlier that you would hope to begin work by January 1st or right after?
Yeah, I would hope to have people on site actually doing some clearing. I've already got some contacts. I've already been looking at that, obviously for economic purposes. But yeah, I would expect there to be people on site, possibly even before then.
Okay.
I actually had to slow down the process there with the resort because of COVID, and I don't want to get stuck doing the heavy lifting and seeing these guys out there in the summertime. It's just too darn hot. So yes, I'm definitely going to be working early winter.
Okay, thank you.
And I am completely amenable to, you know, the clock starts at the date of closing. That's 1 year from the date of closing. It's completely fine.
Okay. Anything else? Discussion?
Let's do it. Let's do it, get it over with. I want that property, they say,
Mr. President, you want to confirm so that you can have a clear motion, does the 91.5 come reduced immediately upon the change of ownership? Or does it stay out there with the promise that it will be reduced and that promise will be effective at the time of closing, and it would be reduced 12 months from then? So you need to clarify that with Mr. Crandall, not only for the help of your motion and consideration, but also for his closing agent and myself.
Everyone understand what he asked?
No.
You want to clarify if the reduced lien amount goes into effect the day of closing or 12 months later?
That's correct, and only the promise goes into effect at the time of closing, and the promise reduces at the end of this.
I think he's asking for it at the time of closing.
Day of closing.
That's what I'm hearing.
Day of closing, correct.
And would the $5,500 be paid on the day of closing?
Hang on a second.
Is it 55?
I have to keep turning you back.
5273.
5273.
About whatever,
Yeah.
give or take.
Yeah,
I'm happy to make that payment on the day of closing.
yeah, it would have to be.
Yes. All right. I'm trying to think of the
Take a
motion.
stab at the motion.
Trying to think of the motion. I move, correct me, just eye me down if I say this incorrectly.
No, that's perfect.
She hasn't said it yet.
But it was perfect. I move that we reduce the lien amount to $5,273, which is 5% of the lien plus expenses, to be paid at closing, and the process of cleanup to be started immediately after closing, and has 1 year to do that. Did I get all that in?
To be brought into compliance.
To be in compliance in 1 year.
I will second the motion.
Did I get all that in?
You got it.
Thank you.
I think you got it, but I think you're missing the spirit of the lien staying there. And I don't believe it's anything individual to Council Member Robertson. It is that Mr. Crandall pays the monetary amount at the time of closing. And and then there's a zero amount there. There's only conditions. And if the conditions are not met, there is no financial lien.
Then the fines begin again. This time they're his.
Okay? And if the council understands the motion and the second to be the intent as to what Council Member Jones stated, then the motion is clear.
Question. The way the motion is made, if I understand it correctly, if it has not been cleared within that 1 year, then there is nothing that the council can go back on Mr. Crandall as the owner to recoup any charges. And as Mr. Coberline explained, the lien would go from 91.5 to 0 with that payment and no penalty for that year if it took longer than a year to clean the property up. Is that about what?
Yes.
I would state that Mr. Crandall could even argue that he has a year before you have to cite him. And so the property could stay out of compliance for a year, and only after a year and 1 day could Mr. Carson go out there. He could make that argument.
So what penalty would be assessed after the year if he hasn't brought it into compliance?
He would go through the normal,
Whatever was
code
not
enforcement
compliant.
process,
Would
a
begin
citation, notice to please comply, if he's not brought in compliance, a date to come back from the code enforcement board, and then they would assess a fine per day.
Whatever process the code enforcement finally comes up with, correct, Ms. Gorman?
But, I mean, Mr. Crandall's goal obviously is to purchase the property and close with no outstanding liens the day he takes ownership of it. How do we, I mean, that's his desire. He's gonna pay whatever's outstanding on that day to get it clean.
Well, that's, I'm sure that's his desire, but he has stated to you that he will take it subject to a lien. But if you are not, we digress. I feel as if I'm advocating for one position over another. I want to make sure that, I wanted to make sure that Councilmember Robinson's motion and Councilmember Jones's second was understood as to the practical impact.
Right.
For up to a year and 1 day after closing. I am not going to be a sixth council member or fifth council member this evening and advocate for one position and another or the protections. I simply wanted to make sure that everyone understood the practical impacts of the motion in the second. So I don't want to be viewed as advocating for conditions.
But the option would be to not have him pay the fines until it was in compliance.
If you could option half of it, you can be as creative as you want.
Right.
Or pay it at the end, so that the lien remains and then it starts accruing at that point. And a foreclosure suit could be instituted if necessary.
Right, that's what you're saying.
But as far as a conditional approval, it could stay, basically the lien is, I'm confused or was by the fact, if we reduce the lien, whether he pays on the day of closing or he pays it 12 months later after he gets to that point, we've still already reduced the lien amount.
That is accurate.
So if there's no conditional release, basically saying, okay, we're not going to release anything until the property's in compliance, you have 12 months to do that. But once again, I mean, he's buying it subject to the lien, but a conditional approval of release from us, if we were to go that route.
If you went that route, you have the carrot and the stick. You have the carrot for compliance. It's, as Mr. Crandall stated, it's compliance. He foresees complying within a year. The monetary amount is nominal in the grand scheme of things here. And so you have the carrot. You also have the stick should something happen to Mr. Crandall or his business or his desires. And then you have the stick to be able to go back to where you were in August, which was go straight ahead and foreclose on the lien. If you have a zero lien, as you know in the financial world, you don't have anything to foreclose on. I think that you are likely better off to just say, Mr. Crandall, keep your 5% in the admin fees at the time of closing and pay it 12 months from now. Or pay half at closing and pay half upon compliance. For example, if he complies within 8 months, then he would owe half of 5% in the admin, whatever half of the grand total was.
What do you think? Should we withdraw the motion and restate it? Or do you want to leave it like it is? Mr. Crandall, okay with it, is that?
Mr. Crandall, you still there?
Hang on a second.
You understand what we're discussing and the concern?
Yeah, I will say this. Yeah, I do understand what you're saying. I will say this, you're talking about the carrot and the stick. If I pay you the $5,273 at closing, and then I go 12 months and I don't comply, there is still a compliance stick. It's time, it's not that the stick's gone, I still have to comply. If I don't, then you start fining me again. And if I don't fit within the parameters of compliance within a certain period of time, you can foreclose on me. I would say that in my position, I would rather, I don't like having things handed over me like that. I would rather pay the money and get to work. And, you know, that's where I'd rather be.
Okay. And therein lies the nature of code enforcement.
Yeah, and the issue is that we would have to refile the lien again because it's been satisfied, and we would have to refile it again. And I know that you're going to comply, that's your intent. But if you didn't, we would have to go through the process of refiling the lien. And that's what we're discussing. Do we want to hold on to the lien till the end so we don't have to refile so that we can move immediately to foreclosure? Or do we want to, and I know obviously you'd rather have it satisfied.
Correct.
Thank you.
I think the motion stands. The second stands.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any other discussion? I have to restate it. Everybody know what it is.
Good luck.
Mr. Ross, you understand it?
No, not all, 100%, but as good as others, I think, though.
I got it.
The simplified version, I think, is that we have a motion to reduce the lien to 5% plus fee to be paid at the date of closing, and he has 12 months to get the property in compliance, or we will start fining him again from zero. So, we'll now proceed to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-1. Thank you, Mr. Crandall. All right, item C, discussion with possible action, Emilio Alamibo, former Dave's property, 118 Northeast 9th Street.
Yes, I didn't even know this, I never done this, but I restarted fixing up the property, cleaning everything up, and then we got Scott to sign off on stuff that we were doing, copy of everything, get this going.
Scott who?
I need, for Mr. Emilio to approach the podium, state your name.
That would be Wayne.
All right.
Wayne is the inspector.
Emilio Palomino, I'm sorry.
Is the microphone on there?
No.
It should be. It's got-
Hello?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Still state your name, please, for the record.
Emilio Palomino.
Okay. And what is this you handed out to us?
It's like, she told me to take pictures and show you everything I've done so far in there, because I didn't know there was anything on there to be fixed up. We were fixing it all up, putting a new roof, everything's been, getting done, everything's cleaned. I just can't handle that lien.
Okay.
The house was destroyed.
Mr. Emilio is here for item C, CDK 17-23 Day, property location 118 Northeast 9th Street.
And is Emilio your first name or your last name?
My first name.
Yeah, see, all of these are backwards. Yeah. I thought so, thank you, sir.
No,
Okay.
no problem.
So, you bought this property subject to, code enforcement liens. We have,
Get my calculator.
our lien amount's $50,400. We've got another $545 in legal fees, it looks like.
Yeah.
And plus, Mr. Coberline, do you have anything else to add to that?
Mr. President, I believe the amount you stated is in legal costs, which are a little bit different. Legal costs are title costs and hard costs like copy expenses, things that the city incurred. The legal fees would be approximately just under $400 in legal fees today. And you'll hear from, if we cover any more, the issue here is that code enforcement authorized foreclosure on this, so we continued working on it. That's why it would be more than Richard.
Do you have a total?
400.
Approximately, in legal fees, approximately $360.
I'm looking $545.92.
Ms. Gorman?
Yes,
Plus 360.
right, I was looking at, I calculated originally at $3,065.92 plus the $360 legal. Does that sound right?
915. Plus we gotta come up with 5%.
What's the total expenses?
All right, so you got, the total expenses by the city is $545.92.
Okay.
So if you do 5% of the $50,400 plus the $545, the other calculator, I thought it was $3,065, is that right?
3435.92.
So it's $34,35.92.
What I got.
What Ms. Gorman did not have before the meeting are the legal fees
Right.
that have accrued since the Code Enforcement Board.
Okay.
The city
Got
has
it.
not received that invoice.
Got it.
So the total amount, if we stuck to the same procedure, 5% plus the fees, is $3,435.92, much reduced from $50,400 plus,
Thank you.
roughly $900.
I didn't even know about this.
So you have already bought this property and are halfway through remodeling the house?
Yeah.
Did you buy this property at a tax deed sale?
I bought it from a lady who got it from a tax deed, told me there wasn't all, otherwise, I did something very stupid, didn't do a lien, like an idiot, in my first,
Okay.
yeah, I was a dumbass, to be honest with you. No, really, I mean, seriously.
Okay, any other questions
The most
for?
honest person we've had tonight, right? It's the most honest.
Any other questions for Emilio?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. What is the will of the council?
I move we reduce the amount of the lien to $3,435.92. I guess we should, I don't know how to condition it. I guess I'll just leave it at that for the moment. We'll see.
I'll pay it right away, I'll pay it tomorrow, I'll make the money and pay it right away.
I mean, he's already,
I didn't get that.
Oh, here.
I didn't get one. It's like they ran you off before you got here with it. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
he's already bringing it into, oh yeah, I mean, he's doing the best he can.
We have a motion on the table.
Oh, did you second? I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to reduce the lien to 34,3592. Any other discussion? Correct, he's already working on the property, he's in the process of bringing it in compliance. So
Right.
once he pays this, if he stops on the property and it falls out of compliance, then the liens, or the fines will start again.
That's it. Then we start over again.
Okay. All right, any other discussion? All right, we'll now vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
John.
you.
Thank
It looks wonderful.
I gotta take this back to Richard Inspector.
Okay.
Thank you guys, have a blessed night, guys,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much,
Thank you.
appreciate it. Yeah, Lord, thank you, Lord.
Prayers work for him.
All right.
Yeah.
This is where we inserted item D under old business, and this is Carol Chico. This is the same issue, but a different property.
It is, and he also, if you remember, mobile home permit was issued in 2018. And so he has been working, and this is his sister's actually, that he's been trying to get this in compliance. So we went out there, it's all been cleaned up. We just have the issue now, the fine. So if I calculate it, it's right, it's $2,545.51.
Mr. Carbolina, do you got anything else to add to that?
Nothing additional, here, it's zero, because number one, we found the issues, that all these needed to go to code enforcement before we did
Before you
anything in this
started.
one. And then, code enforcement did not approve it, so we did not begin any foreclosure proceedings on it after August 24th. I like you to know that so you understand the difference in the numbers.
I've got, 25, 45, 51, and that's what I've got.
That's me.
How much?
25, 45, 51.
Okay.
If they pay tomorrow.
Right.
I don't know, and he's not here to speak to it, but I can relay that if you have a date.
I mean, I guess we can give that number for 30 days or something, and if he hasn't paid 30 days, it just continues to mount.
30 days from tonight?
Yes,
Okay.
that's what I would agree.
Now, because this was added late as a discussion item,
It was still on the agenda,
Okay.
memo, we just didn't have them itemized on here.
okay,
Because when we went out there, we thought we were dealing with non-conforming law, but we're not.
Okay.
It is conforming.
all right. So-
And it is in the packet, the name is in the packet.
It
Yeah,
is,
his name is
yeah.
on the list, yes.
Thank you.
That's where I'm getting my numbers from.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Can't say the name, is it Felici?
Yes, and it was sold to Chico Carroll, or Carol Chico in 2018.
Okay, I move we reduce the amount of the lien on Carol Chico's property to $2,545.51, and that number be good for 30 days.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Okay. All right. Yes, sir?
Quick question. See, this is money that's gonna be coming in fines when it's paid. Does that go to the general fund?
Yes.
Can we clear the other property with it?
Okay.
We get it next year?
I mean, relatively, yes, I mean, it's the same pot.
Goes into the general fund.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the one is enough to clear the other property.
Yes.
All right, item 6, new business. Item A, review of July 2020 financial report, Financial Director Stephen Bloom. Stephen, can I ask you a question while you're preparing?
Yes, sir.
Seems like now all of a sudden we're doing this monthly?
Depends upon what's going on, but yeah,
Okay,
try to do it monthly,
okay.
or supposed to.
Is it something that could be done quarterly, or?
Quarterly, yes. I mean, and I could just send them out monthly to the council to review them. I mean, we do it monthly,
Okay.
meaning the finance team has got to keep them up, so it doesn't, it's up to the council what your pleasure is and how often you see it.
Anybody have any input on that real quick?
Quarterly is great.
I'd like to continue to see it every month.
So we could get it every month and
Yeah.
actually just
And
do
do
a
a
presentation
review.
every quarter.
Absolutely, yeah.
Works for me, okay.
Oh, that's good.
And it doesn't have to be an all or nothing, especially if we're in the middle of a budget and we have some things come up.
Yeah,
I started saying if there's anything important, we obviously need to know it.
well, that's why I asked, 'cause it seemed like first year we weren't doing it monthly, and then I know we had all the Zoom stuff, so
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was, okay.
No, it was really just because of what was going on than it was anything else.
Okay, thank you.
Real quickly before I get into the report, just kind of a quick follow-up. If we start to see a lot of activity and there is a need to start splitting out some of those funds, whether it's the fines coming in or what the city is paying, we can split that out into a different department. We can do some different things. For now, it's all going into one, but we'll have to see. And it certainly can be split, so we have options.
Could it go into contingency?
You wouldn't really want it to continue.
Why?
It's just something to fall back on.
You don't ask questions unless you have something going on in there.
I mean,
That's something going on.
in a roundabout way, you can establish a contingency after you receive the funds, but it doesn't go back into it. Maybe I'm being way too specific to what you're saying. I think the answer is yes, but specifically, no, you wouldn't put it back into contingency, but you could establish something. Yeah.
I think if it went into that, whatever area that we're paying the legal fees and the fines out of, I think it needs to go in there so that we can do the next piece of property.
Understood. Okay, so, what you have in front of you are the July, obviously 2020 financial reports. This puts you 10 months through your fiscal year. So obviously today is September, so you really don't have much in terms of the actual activity, but here's to show you what occurred at least through July. It's 10 months in, and it'll at least give you probably a really good idea of where your numbers are going to end up, good and bad. Page 17 of your agenda book has the first slide that I'm going to cover, which is just an overview. I like to show an overview because it gives you the big picture on where we are, and then I kind of go into each of the major funds. And again, similar to what we've seen, just kind of as a recap, we kind of switched to this slideshow to give you maybe a little bit more visual impact on the numbers. Obviously, the performance column shows you whether it's good or bad, but you can see, you know, red is still red. So we can kind of go through that and provide some explanation on what's kind of going on with each of the individual funds. So kind of starting with the general fund, and again, I think this is the first month where the general fund actually now has a deficit. I think every other previous month we've always had, you know, a surplus. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that your property taxes are collected early in the year because there is certainly a significant incentive and discount to do that. Normally you see that surplus start to wind down. This is a very odd year, obviously, with everything that's going on, and your general fund is taking the brunt of that. So really, when you see it, right now you have about a deficit of about $30,000. It's 29 and some change, but roughly about $30,000. And what you can see to the chart number 1 to the right there, the red borderline is your target. Meaning if all your revenue was coming online, it would be either at the red line or above it. And in essence, I've even color-coded it so that it would be green. So anything in blue means that you are falling short of your budget. And really the only thing that's above that is your local taxes, which is a combination of things, but mostly your property taxes. None of this is really something that, you know, we didn't realize was going to happen, but a lot of your intergovernmental, a lot of your revenue is really kind of starting to slide a little bit. So that's one of the factors that you're, you know, kind of going against the general fund. But it's not all negative, and I put that in here in your financial highlights. The city did receive about $68,000 in delinquent property taxes, which is a large number. I don't know that I've ever seen a fiscal year in the last 8 to 10 years where you've gotten that much. So that is a good note. The city also did receive about $10,000 for the county for the fire vehicle, which has been purchased and is in these current numbers. But the fire department right now through July is kind of the big issue that you have here. And you can see chart number 2, which is on the bottom right. Similar here, what you would want to see is everything in green, meaning that it's below budget. And unfortunately, the fire kind of sticks out. It's about 101%, which means through July, the fire department's already exceeded its annual budget. And again, this is not anything new. When you look at the next slide, we wanted to make sure we were very clear as to what's occurring with your fire department. So when you look at the chart to the right there, it says fire incidents by fiscal year, and this is only through July year to date. So it's comparing July 2020 to July, of obviously the year before. And you have a almost 29% year-over-year increase in fire incidences, or almost 400. So basically, for just the first 10 months of the year, they responded to almost 400 more calls than the year before. So obviously, the budget's not prepared for that. It never will be. So that is, again, and pretty clear, that's why your fire department is kind of over budget. And then furthermore, and just kind of I was curious over the year before, if you look at 2018 and compare it, now you've got 511 incidences above where you were. So again, what that means for the general fund is you got less revenue to cover more, spending. And unfortunately, that's kind of why you're negative for the year. Keep in mind that we have transferred about $157,000 to the capital project fund, which comes from the general fund, and $75,000 of that was for the animal shelter. So that is already in these numbers, and again, that's part of the story as well. So what that all means for the general fund is that probably October or early November, you're going to get a budget amendment from me that's going to have to fix some of this and kind of hopefully balance this budget again, and we'll have to kind of go through some of those options. But that's kind of where the general fund is. Okay, so looking at the airport's actually, is in kind of the green. It's about $10,000 favorable for the year, which doesn't appear to be a lot, but it's actually doing better than that, and I'll get to that in a second. But first, kind of, let's go with fuel sales. That's always the big number we look at. Unfortunately, fuel sales have decreased. And again, kind of looking at a year over year, which is the comparison. So overall, it's about 18.4%, or almost $180,000 that has gone down year over year in terms of revenue. Now, when we had this discussion about June year over year, it was actually up 26%. So that means, and we talked a little bit about this, that means the airport is picking up. Maybe it's a little bit slower than anybody would want, but it's still going down. So that's the positive. Obviously, the negative is, again, the year over year. There hasn't been any capital spending for the airport, but the positive, and kind of I wanted to mention this, it's a new bullet point that I hadn't put in any other ones. We have an AR allowance on the airport of about $62,000. It's something that we have kind of been slowly adding to that. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with what that means is, obviously, the airport is billing out every month, everything except for fuel. Fuel is coming in as it's used. And basically, and everything's working great. Everyone's paying their bills right away, and you don't have to worry about it. And normally what a city would do, we'll put a little bit away for an allowance. Over time, some of those delinquent accounts are starting to grow. And that's something that the airport staff right now is really working on a lot. But from a financial standpoint, we have to assume that some of that will not be collectible. And that's why we record an allowance. It doesn't mean we write anything off, but we are covering the city in case you have to write something off. So where the good news is that the airport is working really hard on this. So every time they collect money in, I will be able to release that allowance and it'll go back down to the bottom line as a good guy. So I wanted to make sure, I cover the part that we have the allowance in case you're asked, and also cover, hey, if they keep that work up and we have to reduce it, meaning, let's say the allowance is 62 and we only need 20. So that's another $40,000 that gets to go back to the bottom line for the airport. Okay. A CRA fund, which this is slide 6, if you're following along. Basically, it's kind of breaking even. It's got about a $1,200 deficit. But included in that for the year was still the $96,000 property that was purchased. And really that's kind of the big activity. As we've talked about during the budget season, one of the things we will do, and now we're basically at year end, we always will be looking at all of the payroll allocations. That's one of the big things that we've talked about during the budget workshops, and that's something that we will do again. And then obviously we'll make adjustments which are usually very favorable to the CRA fund, and we'll provide that to the CRA board so they can look at it. But other than that, that's kind of where they're at. Overall, just to kind of give you some numbers as you work through projects, and this is again through July. And the available resources, which is the last line in the box, is about $323,000. So that available resources for them means that that's everything they have as of today that they could put towards projects. And I know they have a list of projects. There's probably a lot more than that, but that's kind of why I had that added on there. We can keep tracking that, but that's kind of a number that will, probably around that will get carried forward into the next year, and then, be hopefully used for projects. Okay, slide 7 looks at the utility fund. So we talk about the utility fund usually without the depreciation expense. So without depreciation, the utility fund had a surplus of about $240,000. So again, with depreciation, it shows a deficit, but again, depreciation is non-cash. So without it, it's about $240,000, of a surplus. And on the next slide, again, you can see kind of the breakdown. This is the slide that we kind of always take a look at. Obviously, electric, which is in your first column, is kind of the largest and most profitable service for the city. But the two kind of positive notes, if you look at the water and you look at sewer on the operating income line, and again, operating income line, that's before the transfer to the general fund, both are positive. In prior years, they were both significantly in the red. So both of them are positive. Gas is kind of the one that's fallen behind, but we expect that one to improve now that some of the activity is going on there, and we'll see some improvement even next month with the true-up invoice that they did. That'll even get better. So overall, the utility fund is still pretty strong when you take a look at it. So again, that's probably really favorable news for the city. Slide 9 shows you your capital projects, and again, you see the animal shelter was one in there. Your gas project, which was done, kind of the first quarter of the fiscal year, are really kind of the big ones. And the CRA, has some activity in there as well. I also, in slide 10, will show you your capital spending. This is where your vehicles purchase. You see your animal control pickup, your fire vehicle, 2 Dodge Chargers are kind of the significant things. I mentioned the CRA property, and then the utility fund also has some shared equipment on there. And then your last slide is your outstanding loans. This is really going to be mostly a reoccurring informational page so that you can kind of see the activity. You really, when you look at this, come in terms of bank loans, it's just the city hall. It's really your big loan. The purchase of the fire vehicle that's on there. Right now, the remaining amount's about $57,000. That's not really a whole lot. It's really kind of the city hall that's got the $1.2 million. But I'm also tracking any loans between funds, because I think that's important to keep in mind as we talk about funds moving around. So in other words, the utility fund basically put up a lot of the money, if not all of it, for the city hall. So we've got to keep track of what the general fund owes back to it, and that's kind of going to be a slow payment back for that. But that's kind of why this page is in there, so that we can constantly kind of have it aware for everybody to see. And that's all I have.
Okay.
And any questions or anything else? Okay, a reminder, you have your second public hearing next Tuesday, 5:01. So,
That's good.
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Item C, under new business discussion, Nope. Item B, discussion with possible action, airport manager executing lease term extension. Mr. Siegel.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. I wanted to bring something before everybody to get your input, and I've already talked to Fred about this, and he said it's definitely within your ability to do. So I wanted to put before the council a possibility to delegate authority from the city council to the airport manager to execute lease term amendments, lease term extensions. So my intent with this is to not have to bring every single lease term extension before you and have it put on the consent agenda. We could just execute it out at the airport, and it'd streamline the process a little bit more for the customers. Now, these lease term extensions are already existing leases, and it would only be the extensions that we're doing, and the extensions that are allowed by the preset lease terms. So any new leases or any renewals, amendments, anything other than a specific lease term extension would be brought before the council.
An extension will be written into the current contract, and so like a CPI would already be there.
Yes, ma'am.
As well.
Him as supervisor should have their authority to do that.
I believe that Mr. Lippman was trying to get this accomplished as the city manager, but I don't recall ever seeing anything, and Latricia and I both kind of looked for it, and we could never find anything on paper saying that it was said to be so we wanted to bring it before the council, make sure that we had your blessing, and try to streamline the process a little bit more.
Mr. Coughlin, you don't see any issues with that?
No, I think that it was stated that, what we often see at the time of an extension, because it's after a period of some amount of time, usually say 5 years or more, they want an amendment, the lessee wants an amendment to something. And as was, I believe it was stated, that if that occurs, then that would have to come back to the council.
Correct.
Otherwise, these extensions are actually, by law, that you were required to give it to the lessee. It was contracted for unless we have some extraordinary circumstances.
I know you need a motion. I don't know how to say it.
I think that a consensus.
Consensus would be wonderful. That would be
I think
nice.
a consensus would be appropriate here, and then come back with a resolution. So should something happen to any one of us, then we understand what is necessary, and it would be very helpful to the new city manager.
Wonderful.
Do you agree with that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Pass it by general consent. All right. Thank you. Item C, discussion with possible action, approve up to a $20,000 expense for an engine replacement in the 2017 Ford F-550 crane truck. This is resolution 2020-54. Mr. Zanoski.
Yes, this is a truck that is assigned to the wastewater plant for pulling the pumps, items such as that. The truck suffered a catastrophic engine failure. However, at this point in time, we don't know the extent of it. So we contacted Ford. They said there is a slim possibility that some of this is under warranty. However, once we get it over there, if it's determined that it is not covered under warranty, we have to have that truck back, and we'll have to have the funds allocated to pay for it. Spoke with Mr. Bloom on the funding of this, and there appears to be contingencies monies that could be used for this. We had an estimate, one of the local shops here in town. We took this to them, kind of get a preliminary diagnosis, and they worked up an estimate for us. So the motor replacement here in town is between $13,000 and $15,000. However, as we get into this, we don't don't know what all's involved in it, so we make sure we have a little bit of contingency built into the, number that we're asking for.
Okay. Any questions? Discussion?
No. Does it have a resolution number? I move resolution 2020-54.
Hang on a second, we have a question online.
Yeah, my name is Thomas Pearson. What caused the catastrophic failure on that rig? It's only 3 years old.
Not exactly sure at this point in time, that's why we need to send forward to have it diagnosed.
Okay, so I guess my other question, I guess the reason I'm asking is because this rig is only 3 years old. And we're looking at possibly trying to pay out over in between $13,000 to $20,000 to have it repaired. Is there any maintenance done on a daily basis before it's even operated?
Yes.
Okay. So we're hoping that what it is, that catastrophic failure is something that was a flaw when they built the engine is what we're hoping.
That is what we're hoping for.
Outstanding. That's all I got. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I agree, I mean, it's a fairly new truck, so let's say
Right.
it's just covered in warranty, but we have to get it repaired, so.
If they have to.
Any other discussion? We have a motion, right?
Yes, we did.
We did not get a second
We did get a second.
from,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear who the second was.
That was me.
Okay, thank you.
all right, we have a motion and a second, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, work on that warranty, CJ.
Amen. Tell us if they want us to buy another one, and they'll make this one good.
Get better luck than I do. All right, item D is resolution 2020-55, a resolution of the city of Williston, Lee County, Florida, establishing locations for 2-hour parking on certain streets and parking lots within the city of Williston, and providing an effective date. City planner.
Yes, sir. If you remember, at the last meeting, we brought before you ordinance 685, amending our code of ordinances allowing time limits on certain streets and parking lots. And this was a result of the city receiving complaints from residents who visited the post office and other establishments downtown who were having a hard time finding a parking space due to employee parking in various areas. So at the time, we had a map where our interim city manager wanted these signs to be posted, and you asked for a map. We don't attach a map to an ordinance because we don't want to codify it. So I'm bringing back a resolution that identifies where, along with the map on the back, that just shows where the 2-hour parking signs are intended to go. That's requested.
Okay. Questions or discussion?
No, sir.
Everybody understands where it's at?
Yes.
Okay.
Ready for a motion?
Ready.
I move that we approve resolution 2020-55. Second.
Motion and a second, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. Item E, discussion with possible action, city manager position for the vice president, it says.
Where'd he go? Where'd he go?
Okay, so I think this is a 2-part situation, if I understand correctly. We currently have an interim city manager, police chief, and there is a need to relieve him of that duty effective October 1st for some other police department issues he needs to be able to handle. And secondly, we presented an offer to our pick for the new city manager position, and he refused our offer, and will not be taking the position with the city of Williston. So we need to determine our next step in the full-time city manager position.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Are we gonna just forget all about number 2, or what?
That is the discussion that we need to have. So,
He did receive 3 votes as opposed to the other one of 5.
Right.
Now, I realize, reading this stuff, there's some things in there that we would all have questions about. But none of the questions are really answered, and I don't know if we can answer. But this man apparently was city manager at Holly Hill, which is a pretty good sized town, for 9 years. That's a pretty good long time. Now then he gave it up and said he wanted to retire and spend more time with his family. He did that once before. Okay, that might be a simple way of saying, I'm not getting along here, and I think I need to get out on peaceable terms. So I don't think we should hold that. Now, that we do have some information there, it says, credit card, or there were some undocumented purchases on his city credit card. So we don't know what those were. We don't know if they were serious or if they were something that you would normally allow your manager to do. We don't know what they were about.
right.
So my feeling is that we need to examine him further. I thought he interviewed well. The man seemed to know a little bit about a lot of things. Electricity, which you had, sewage, water, CRA. He's been involved, and I like the fact that he started a 10-year project to get the wiring underground. Well, we've got a project here. We got some of our wiring underground, and I know it'd take a long time to ever get that done, but it's a goal, I think, that eventually we're coming to. Get this stuff underground, so every time there's a flicker out there, it don't knock the power out.
Those dead dumb squirrels.
Yes, and then squirrels again. But I think he needs to be checked out a little more. Don't know whether somebody we got should do it, or whether we should assign an investigator like we do on these background checks to check this man out, visit with him. And also with the city of Holly Hill, where he worked last. I just kinda liked the guy myself. I thought he interviewed well now. But I do think these things need to be checked out. But he's done a lot of quite a few things. Now, in the event we don't see fit to go further with him, then obviously we've got to start over again. And I would suggest that we get what's commonly referred to as a headhunter. To pick out, give them our job code, everything we want to know, and have them get no more than 20 apps, preferably 15, to give us time to do this, because we're not going to get it done by October 1st. And we're almost there. What is it, another week and a half? So, but we don't want to drag it out till January 1st either. So, that's my 2 bits for what it's worth.
Well, right now, we need to get somebody as interim.
Yes, we have 2 issues we're dealing with.
Right now.
Just not to complicate it, but
Right.
we need to determine what we want to do about the interim position, with the likelihood that this is going to take weeks or a month, we don't know how long. And then 2, we need to decide the next steps in that process. So that's what this is for. Let's decide which way we want to tackle first. The interim position or the process for the full-time city manager.
I looked like you were headed on the interim, so go ahead.
Okay? So, obviously, based on your comments and what we all know is we're not gonna have a full-time city manager hired within the next few weeks or possibly months. We need to relieve Chief Stroh of those duties effective October 1st or September 30th. And we need to, in my opinion, appoint another interim city manager effective that day. I'm open for input as to what direction we go with that.
I think we only have two obvious choices,
Yeah, two that I can think of.
and that would be Ms. Jackie and CJ. Those are my obvious choices. And I don't know, but they both got a lot on their plate. So I don't know which one is the best.
I was thinking CJ or Ms. Gorman as well. What's your opinion, Mr. President?
I would, I think those are our two obvious choices. I think that with Chief Stroh, he had some limitations to the things that he could do as interim city manager because of his other positions. So, you know, while we also have to discuss whoever we appoint as the interim city manager, what their role and responsibilities are, do we want to give them full city manager responsibility, or are we going to restrict that in any way? I think it's something we have to discuss as well. You know, initially, my feeling is probably that either of these two individuals, if they're willing, are very
We're
capable.
talking about them and they're.
Here they sit. We're talking about them like they're not here, right?
I think either are very capable of doing it. I don't know. I mean, unless one of the two voices an opinion that they don't want to do it, or have no interest in it, or would refuse it.
I mean, I don't know, I know they're busy, both of them. I don't know who's got the most on their plate. Who's got time, I don't know. Who can work both sides of the hall.
They're both so capable, they're not saying a word, are they?
Gotta work both sides of the hall here.
CJ has seniority, I want him to go first and talk to, and speak to this. I respect that.
Okay, thank you. CJ, is this something that you feel an interest in and capable of accomplishing, knowing that it could be a few months
or longer?
I guess there's been some thought and discussion about that. I don't have an issue with the ability to do it. It's not something I want to pursue full-time in lieu of not getting a city manager. Again, you know, with Ms. Gorman interest in being a finalist, if that goes to consideration, that would certainly change things. I know with Chief Stroh here and some of the limitations that he has had, I have filled in the areas where he couldn't. So can I do it? Yes. Am I willing to? I guess to a point, I would do it for a period of time until city manager was found. Again, making sure that you understand I'm not interested in doing the full-time city manager at this point in time. Still got a lot to learn on that. I also would not have a problem doing a joint venture with Ms. Corman on that. So again, that's something maybe you want to think about.
Oh, that's new.
That might be interesting.
Co-interim city manager.
We do that now. We
can't
do
do
Pretty much. So again, short answer to it, I would do it if the council sees fit.
I do too.
Mr. Ross? Yes, sir?
I think we need two of them.
I don't know, it kind of gets rid of that across the hall thing.
I remember the last meeting where we had two people gonna do a job. And that's not to say that this would happen, but I don't want to see it happen again.
Okay.
I don't remember that. Never mind.
Yeah.
I probably don't want to, right? Oh, yes I
do.
No.
Light
Okay.
bulb.
So we know CJ's
Will.
safe.
Right.
Ms.
Ms.
Waldman?
Waldman? I'm at your will, I'll do what you ask me to do. I've always done that. So it's up to CJ if, again, he goes first, and y'all decide, and if you need me, you know I'm there, so.
Question. CJ, what percentage of the city's business are you already handling under instruction from city manager or in conjunction with a city manager? Can you give us a rough estimate of that?
I would say on the operations side, public works and utilities, 95% of that. As far as administrative side, I'm probably up there around the 50% at that as well. So again, it's not really fitting anything additional into my schedule aside from some of the meetings and stuff like that.
Well, put together, they make a really good one. One's administrative and one is operational. Hadn't thought about that.
I feel like in light of CJ, personally, I'm torn. I know they would both do a good job. I think with CJ's years of experience within the city of Williston, I would probably offer him that would be what I would do. And he's doing a lot of it already and
Right.
works very closely.
Yeah, that is a very good point.
Right.
Yeah,
That's what I was getting
yeah, good point. And on the administrative side, y'all could consult with each other,
Certainly.
if need be.
You have to work very closely
at.
together.
But you gotta consider, when something goes wrong with electricity, they don't call up to get an administrative position on it. They wanna know when you're gonna fix it. And he gives a better answer on that.
That's why it's the utility director.
Well, when that happened and they called up for the city manager or the utilities manager, all they have to do is make one phone call.
There you go.
I do know that Terry's being awful quiet over there. He hasn't thrown his hat in any direction, so.
He just wants his chief back.
Yeah.
I just want my boss back. No, I would point out that every time there's an issue when it comes to employment, regulations, or whatever, or us making a decision, and sometimes making the wrong decision, CJ is the first one to point out that we've headed in the wrong direction and need to correct it when it comes to the civilian employees. I love working with Jackie. I think she does a great job. I do believe everything she has with planning and CRA probably keeps her plate full.
Yeah.
I like working with CJ, and if you're asking me my opinion, who would be the best of the two, obviously either one of them would be great for this council and this city, but once again, I'd probably go back to the one who has the most knowledge and the most time here, which would be CJ. He would get my vote, and that would be my recommendation. So.
All right, I was really asking if you were interested.
Right.
No.
I thought that's the direction you were going.
You don't have to respond to that, I'm just.
I am only interested if they decline, or if you do not select them. That's how important it is for the chief to get back.
The mayor.
No.
All right, thank you, appreciate that. Okay, any other,
I'm sitting in the middle, no daggers.
any other questions or discussion?
Yes, sir, I think it's your will to
I
appoint
think,
them.
there you go. I think you've got it.
I think you should. We'll give you consent for
We
it.
decided to give that job to you.
I like your reasoning.
When you're not doing anything else.
Yeah, okay.
He's a man.
So, forgive me for my ignorance, but what does it take to do that? You tell me just to say I waive and appoint him, or we're not voting on that?
I think we could,
Consensus.
yeah,
Mr.
consensus.
You'll need another resolution that
Oh, another resolution.
how?
You have to show third parties and outside individuals, for example, perhaps even a closing agent of, somebody that's going to do something, that the interim city manager has the authority to do certain things.
Right, they sign a lot of
You-
things.
You could do that by calling a special meeting and telephoning the closing agent and others as they want to see that authorization, or you can execute a resolution. We're pretty good at special meetings.
So you could prepare the resolution possibly for our budget hearing?
If you choose to go that way.
That's our next meeting, that's, I'll be able to,
Yeah,
that's
the
by
bu-
October
the
first.
20
That's the 29th of September, that'll be in time.
Yeah.
We add it to that agenda. We'll be able to handle
Okay,
that.
Mr. Wright, you can add to that agenda and we can have the resolution prepared,
At the budget workshop, the final,
budget hearing.
whatever it is, yeah.
Is that acceptable? Okay. All right, that's taken care of then? Looking for a nod or something, is it good?
Good.
No, no nod, I was
Yes.
looking for.
There you go.
Okay,
Not quiet, they'll be done.
so now we have to go back to the full-time city manager, and
Right.
I agree. So if you go back for just a brief moment, we said in our meeting after the second set of interviews, that when we were gonna vote for our top two, to narrow it down, those votes that they got were not the determining factor on who we hired or tried to hire, or who was our second choice. They were simply gonna narrow it down. We had a consensus that Mr. Hyatt was number one, and we wanted him, so pointing out, though, that it did not mean that the second vote getter was our second choice ultimately. We still had to make that decision. So that's where we stand today. I am not really comfortable with any of the other finalists. I just have questions with things that, were either on their resume or background search.
I didn't vote for him at all because of the baggage.
And I think,
Well, somebody besides me voted for him.
I did, he was
Yeah.
one of my top two.
Yeah.
He wasn't originally in my top two, he was in my, remember I had the top 11?
Yeah.
And then when we all voted that day, we narrowed it down to 4, he was not one of my 4.
I only voted for one.
Yeah, he was not one of
Because I
my
didn't
4,
like
but
it.
when we voted, on the 4 to get our top 2, he was one of my 2.
okay, so our options are basically, we pick one of our finalists and see if they're still interested. Or we completely start over internally again. Or we hire a third party in some capacity to outsource this. And I'm gonna tell you, my feeling is if we start over, I really don't wanna go through that again.
I don't wanna
No,
go through
I don't
105.
I think we've done the best we can do ourselves, I think we need to hire somebody who knows what they're doing.
Head on it.
And unfortunately, it's gonna take time, number one. I have reached out to the League of Cities to try to get input, and to maybe somebody that they could direct us in. They have not called me back yet with any of that information. I did reach out to a consultant out of Tallahassee that does this sort of thing, that I got the name of, and they said, sure, we'd love to do it. Basically, they would advertise it, take the applications, process them, narrow them down based on what we wanted, and then we would still have to make the decision
Right.
with the final pool. But the cost to do that was about $20,000.
That's so straight up.
Hello.
So,
There goes that general fund.
now, this is one firm. I have not had a chance to call others. I don't, you guys have thrown out terms like range riders and all this stuff. I don't know what all that is. And I
We used
don't-
range riders before.
I don't know how to handle that.
Yeah,
do that.
range riders, yeah.
Mhm.
Didn't we use them?
They're through the Florida League, I think.
Yeah.
We have, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I called the Florida League, but I used the insurance guy. He was supposed to try to refer me to somebody, and I never got that, so.
I think the range riders are through the Florida League,
Yeah, I think they are, aren't they?
and I don't think they charged anything before.
And what do they do? What is that?
Mayor, do you remember?
It was, I think it was when we had Jim Coleman, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That we used the range rider.
Yeah.
What is a range rider? Are they someone who fills in, or are they someone who goes out and finds headhunters?
Either one, they'll do either or. They'll come fill the position for you as a consultant until they find somebody. They'll send you somebody that you pay as a contract employee, or they will go find you viable applications.
Mm-hmm. You give them what you want.
They're probably gonna bring us the same people we've already looked at.
Mr. Coleman?
The range riders are generally volunteers who may require incidental expenses, and they're generally retired city or county managers. I can tell you that I've worked with several of them. It's been pleasant. I can tell you that we've had a client recently look into them, and they're not moving around very much due to the pandemic. So, for example, you would be asking someone to come locally and stay in a hotel, and then being okay with that, and then going back home, not periodically, frequently, because they're only volunteering part-time. They're not generally going to come here for 40 hours a week. Now, I do encourage you to go ahead and look through that, because things do change. And so, my most recent involvement with that, just listening, was around May. So, I offer that for what it's worth. I'd hate for you to leave out of here with one option. That's to go look at the range riders and talk about them in 2 weeks, and then be 2 weeks behind again.
Well, they are through the Florida League, aren't they?
Yes.
I thought so.
I think they're separate, but they work close in hand if they are separate.
And I do remember they didn't charge any money, just the incidental, as you said. We could put them up in the tiny house village.
I will tell you what I recently told a client, and I would offer Mr. Bloom's here, so I'll put him on the spot for any comments if he has anything additional or adverse to what I'm going to say. Is that $20,000 is a lot of money. I've seen qualified, experienced city managers make that up in grant opportunities and reserves quickly. So I would encourage you to think long term, and I do realize $20,000 is a lot of money.
Yes, sir. Range Rider program is through the FCCMA. They are retired city and county managers with lengthy experience and who are respected within the public management field. Range Riders are appointed by the boards of directors of the FCCMA and the International City County Management Association, ICMA. They, at no cost, as volunteers, they provide career and employment counsel to members, guidance and counsel to members regarding ethics questions or concerns, blah, blah, blah. Upon request by the governing body of the jurisdiction, upon verification of a administrator vacancy, the range riders will provide basic guidance and assistance. Services may include outlining to elected officials the placement process based on ICMA guidelines, determining qualifications, compensation, and position requirements, assisting local staff with position advertisements, reviewing and recommending semi-finalist candidates based on position standards established by the governing body, and providing assistance to the jurisdiction during the interview phase of the placement process. The governing body shall select finalists for interviews. Background searches on candidates are not included in the services and should be conducted through qualified individuals or firms retained by the city or the county. So that's it in a nutshell.
Sounds like we need to spend $20,000. So that's pretty much what we've done already. I think we had a good ad. I think we had a good job description. Although we got 40 million applications that didn't make that job description.
You're right.
Oh, yeah. half of them worked at the Piggly Wiggly.
Or they weren't willing
Read
to
it.
relocate.
Or they were 20 years old with no experience.
Ms. Corwin, did you have any comment on the range riders? I saw you.
I do.
Okay.
I've had experience and it's not been good, and I honestly tell you that. But the ones that I worked with were from out of state. They weren't familiar with the state, comprehensive plan, our regulations, our DEP, you know, our permitting processes, and it was never a pleasant experience. But that's me, in my experience. Others may have done well, but typically, the ones that I have seen have come from far north. A lot of these states didn't even need building permits in many of the cities that they came from. So it was really tough trying to work through that and get them to understand the things that can happen in Florida. It's very different here.
That's why I always look for Florida experience when I'm judging an application, because it's totally different. I mean, a manager from another state, you're right, doesn't know our rules and regs. Half of them never heard of the Sunshine Law. Our favorite Sunshine Law.
So we're back to a couple parts again. Is it the consensus that then we're not satisfied with our existing finalists and we're gonna move on past that without offering or negotiating further?
I am not crazy about the other existing, the three others, but I'm looking at our list. Do we want to skip over those and pick from our list? You're looking at me like,
I'm not listening.
what? I don't know.
I really feel like this is a huge decision for this council in the direction of the city.
Mm-hmm.
And we have been working on this for months and months, and I'd like to solve it. But I also feel like 2 more weeks would give some of us time to do some research on all of these options. And I mean, I don't want to wait, but that's a good point. We narrowed down to 4, and for some reason, after interviewing and going through background checks and stuff, we decided that the other 3 really aren't what we want. And maybe somebody in that list that we had to exclude because we were trying to get down to 4 or 5. And,
right.
But I don't know.
I mean, I had 11 to begin with.
Right.
If we take the 4 out of the 11.
I mean, we had some with, excuse me, well, we picked the 3 votes, and then we had the 2s, you know, we go that way. Is it worth a shot?
There were 4 that were ICMA accredited. That would be somebody a range rider would throw at us. Because that's essentially the rules. We've interviewed 1, 2 of those. We interviewed 2 of those. The other 2 we did not interview. That's just, you know, comment. I don't know if it's worth calling in some more to interview. I don't know.
Or is there too much time that we have for their interview, you know?
Right.
Brooke, do you know what message was delivered to those others?
Nothing at this point.
The other 3 or everybody?
Everybody at this point has not been contacted.
Okay.
We were waiting to determine what you wanted, what your will was to do. If we were gonna send 1s and 2s letters or let it be. And so, at this point, I mean, if we need to go back through and contact the other ones to see who is still interested, we can do that.
One was called, I believe, to find out.
He did, Mr. Bonner did.
Mr. Bonner.
Yeah, Bonner.
The one who has Florida experience, who is ICMA accredited, is a Mr. Rosenthal.
Right.
From New Port Richey.
And he had your vote.
Yeah, I think he only got mine.
Yeah, well, but I'm saying,
Yeah.
your pick, one of
Right.
your picks.
He is currently in Newport Richey as the, redevelopment, commercial redevelopment liaison for Pasco County. But he's been the assistant county manager of Pasco County before that. And then he was in Nevada and Illinois, so he's been all over, but he currently lives in Newport Richey. Of this list, he's probably the only one who's certified accredited that we would want to look at.
Well,
Unless it was Mr. McCroskey. I had Mr. McCroskey was on my list. It may be that we can do some more investigation about that credit card issue, because it was really the only issue that I had.
yes, sir.
Well, Mr. McCroskey, on 2 separate occasions, though, he quit because he wanted to be closer to his family, or he wanted to be with his family. And this was with 2 different cities. Who's to say how long, if he got that position here, that he might want to quit and be closer to his family too. And the credit card, that was found out by an audit on city expenses, that it was from him on his credit card. The outcome.
If I remember right, he used it after he was no longer their employment. I think that was what I remember.
Something, I'm just throwing this out here since we're talking here. Maybe if the council wanted to bring 3 to 5 people back, you said you wanted to wait till the next meeting, 3 to 5 people back that you might want to consider and discuss those people. And then think about whether you want to use an executive search or range riders or whatever over the next 2 weeks and make that decision at that time. Just a thought.
Basically where I'm at with it, because I'm not prepared to go through my list and decide who, if anybody, I would want to interview out of that. I mean, I had a few on my list that didn't get picked. I didn't pick but one of the top 4 finalists, so. At this point, all I know to do is put it on the agenda for the next regular meeting, and I will try to get a couple more prices from these third-party companies and research the range rider piece, and I would ask that everybody bring back 4 at the most that you would be willing to consider an interview outside of those we've already talked to. If you feel strongly that one of those should be in that list, then maybe we need to interview them again, if we have further questions. At this point, even with Mr. McCroskey, if we want to ask him about a few of these things, I don't really know how to do that other than either appoint one of us to call him or bring him back for another interview.
Right.
Well, the problem too is you can't call them different cities and ask them about their work. All they can tell you, yes, he was employed here, yes, he was employed from here to here. That's all that they can legally tell you. You cannot ask them, why did you get rid of
They
him?
can say he was ineligible for rehire.
They can say that.
That's a giveaway.
And that's it, yeah. But you can't ask for a whole lot, yeah.
That's true. It is true.
Well, it sounds like,
Let's do our homework.
sounds like the consensus is that we're not ready to hire one of our other finalists. Is that, are we agreed upon that?
Even if we went to number 2, I would want to interview him again.
Okay. You'll step to the podium, state your name.
Instead of wasting all the money and everything, why don't y'all promote someone that works for the city? That actually knows something about the city. I mean, you probably could hire Miss Jackie, full-time city manager, to replace her, because she's worked with CJ. I mean, it's pretty simple.
It's not simple, or we would have done it already.
It sounds very simple, and this is a difficult situation to discuss in front of the applicant, but, I mean, we have considered that.
I mean, I know she can handle it.
So,
Very good customer.
And I don't doubt necessarily that she could either, so, She got a vote from me to interview her the first time.
That's what I was thinking, instead of wasting city money and.
Me too.
So far, we're not wasting any money, we're going back to look at applications.
I'm just saying, instead of wasting all this time.
So, she very well may be in the next 4 that we bring back next week.
Because, I mean, CJ can help her with any questions, and I mean, she already knows everything, just replace her.
Yes, sir. Understood. Thank you. Okay, so we in somewhat of an agreement. We'll do some research, but also bring back your top 4 out of the existing list we have next week for further discussion, and we'll start a plan.
Even if we get somebody who can, we give a list of 20 of people who've applied, and they'll just go do the research on them. Rather than just starting all over again, maybe we can do that. I mean, a couple of different scenarios, maybe.
Okay. Anything else on that?
I don't have those other applications now, 'cause I got rid of them once we got down to 4.
Oh, gee.
Uh-oh.
Do you still have them, the email that they were sent to you?
Yeah, email?
If you have the.
Oh, no, well, I don't know whether I got it or not.
If you got the email, then all of them are still on.
I started to say I can send them to
Brooke does.
Tricia, and she can send them to you.
Brooke
I
does.
don't want 100 of them things now.
If you'll ask Brooke,
They
she'll
came
give
in
it
like
to
4
you.
batches.
She can give you the whole 106, or you can get the ones that you voted for before. Brooke, you can handle that?
For your
Okay.
reading pleasure.
I stick with what I got.
You can get the top 11.
Well, I wish we could come up with a final decision, but it's not gonna happen tonight, so.
Yeah.
Any other discussion on item E?
Mr. President, just to clarify, on the next council agenda, discussion with possible action, narrowing down city managers,
City manager
or just a
position.
list.
Just say city manager position. That way, whatever direction
Can
we
go in
decide to
either
go.
direction.
Okay, thank you.
And at the special, or at the budget hearing,
Resolution.
we'll have a resolution for the interim position, right? All right, moving on. Item number 7, public participation. Is anybody out there that would like to speak? You have 5 minutes. Please come to the podium. Anybody online? No? Okay. Item 8, any announcements? Mr. Ross?
No, sir.
Jones?
No, sir.
Mayor?
No, sir.
I've got a question. Somebody called me today about Light Up Williston. I said, probably not.
Isn't that a chamber?
Have to ask the chamber.
That would be I was wondering, have you heard of any discussions in the chamber?
I'm not thinking it's out of the question yet, but I can find out from Mike Langston.
The reason is because, the Junior Women's Club is talking about their Jingle Bell Jog to coincide with Light Up Williston. So I didn't know whether anybody heard anything. I haven't heard anything. Nothing? Okay, thank you.
Pro, are we going to let that go by? Contract with Waste Pro.
They're working on it.
They're working on it, and when we
Have you heard from them?
have our new interim city manager, he can negotiate the contract, right?
The chamber hasn't
Read
decided.
this one.
Thank you.
And I don't know if you all heard Brad, he said he had not heard anything from Waste Pro.
I did not say that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I confirmed that with my head shake, that I have not received any response from the
Okay.
city.
Thank you, excuse me.
Didn't say anything, you just shook
He
your
just
head.
shook his head.
He looks disgusted.
He does.
It's so funny.
I'm tired of the emails about Waste Pro.
Okay. Any other council announcements? Mr. Coverland?
I apologize for my appearance. I'm in no way, shape, or manner disgusted with anything.
We're going around. Patricia? Jackie? Terry?
Comment from the interim city manager who's on vacation, wants to know if the next resolution will also put him back as the chief of police.
If it needs to, does it need to?
I think that's his question.
Oh.
Tell him no.
We need more patrol deputies, or officers, I'm sorry, officers. He needs to be on night.
Yeah, we have to discuss that, it wasn't on the agenda, so we'll talk about it later. CJ, you got anything?
Yes, the homecoming parade. Some questions as whether that's going to be allowed or not, so just some food for thought. Next meeting, we can have a discussion on that.
I think they decided to have it. They called it off and then they decided to have it.
Right.
That's what that's what I heard.
With my conversations with the high school has been that they are going to have it, they decided not to have it, and then they are now rescheduling for October, but like they want to do is still have a parade. But with the COVID-19 regulations and social distancing and all of that, we need to kind of make a decision if we're going to go ahead and look at approving a parade this year or we're not, one of the two.
I don't know how we can here if we're gonna have to have the police influence here, because if they do the parade down Noble like they want to, it takes, what, 45 people or something like that here to block off the streets, and then we have to call for the different agencies to get their help, and with the COVID and this, with 2 weeks notice or whatever.
You can't do it in 2 weeks.
I don't think it can be done in 2 weeks.
Minimum rushing it for 30 days. Normally, we start this 2 months out.
Yeah, because you have to do the DOT permit too.
And
Yeah,
the
the
DOT permit is,
DOT,
yes, and I mean, and that's kind of where we're at is, you know,
But we don't have an application from them yet.
we don't, because that's been their discussion is, you know, is it even something that we're going to entertain to be able to do it? And now since they turned around and changed their dates, you know, obviously it's going to be less than the 30 days regardless.
I heard they wanted to go from the new high school to the football field, go Main Street, that's what I heard.
And that's what the conversation was too, but there's been no confirmation on what exactly they wanted to do.
Then but then it was changed to Noble.
Yes, sir, agreed. So, I mean, there hasn't been, the application brought in, but I know that the conversation has been going, but again, you know, it's, everything is short notice. But are
We
we
can't
gonna?
do it, the police department can't do this.
If they did it down Main, if they did it down Main and then went down, whatever that is, what is that, Fifth? Whatever, that goes to Booster Stadium, it's all right there in the same southwest section. They
The
might,
high school.
they could do it without a DOT permit,
The ball field.
and you wouldn't need near as many people.
They can do it from the high school down to
Down
Main,
to the
turn up to the
stadium.
stadium there. I think that we could probably make some arrangements with a few
Yeah.
people with help from the sheriff's department there and make that happen. But that down Noble, without the DOT approval and all this, it's not going to
And I
happen.
understand that, and that's, I mean, that's not my concern. It was more of, are you going, is the council going to approve or be okay with us actually having a parade?
Depends on where they do it. Yeah, if they do it down Main and to the, to
The
Booster
social
Stadium.
gathering of more than 50 people is okay for a parade.
I don't, I'm not saying that either,
But
that's part of the
that's the
concern.
question. Is
Yeah.
how
That's
do
why
we-
I said until they've applied for the permit or whatever, I don't know how to answer that.
Okay.
I think somebody from the school, high school, or the, school board might want to be here at the next council meeting.
We can address that.
But,
They need to decide first, and then they can bring it up.
but that council meeting is,
The-
October the
yeah.
6th,
Six.
and that wouldn't be enough time.
No, and I agree with you.
And there's no application presented.
No, there's not.
So let's put it back on their plate, if they decide to put something together and bring it to us, staff will have to, you know, make us aware and we'll go from there.
There you go.
Okay? Any other announcements? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Ooh, take it.
All those in favor?
Bang. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Motion
Rock and roll. Excellent.
Good.